In the past 2.5 years, the Egyptian democracy has seen many twists and turns as it seeks to evolve. And a man who's now in charge of projecting Egypt's image to the rest of the world, Foreign Minister Nabil Fehmi, a week after he's taken charge, is joining us exclusively on DD News. Thank you very much, Foreign Minister, for sparing the time. I know you're a man who has an overflowing agenda. And your time is very precious, so let me get straight to the point. You have a very, very challenging role, responsibility, and task of convincing the world about the legitimacy of this government. How are you going about achieving that?
Well, let me start by saying that I'm very happy to do this interview. It's actually the first interview I do with the foreign press since my appointment. And I chose India for our long-standing relations and hopefully for the roles that I look forward to seeing between the two countries in building a better world for both nations. In terms of our new government here in Egypt, we've had two revolutions, or a revolution and a revolutionary correction in 2.5 years. The last one, which was 30th of June, necessitated that the army intervene again, as it did in 2011.
Answering the call of the people.
Answering the call of the people both times. The first time, it remained managing the politics for a year. This time, it handed over to the head of our constitutional court within less than 2 days. And it did so after consulting with the political stakeholders, including some Islamist stakeholders, like the Noor Party, about what is the roadmap to return completely to a democratically elected parliament, democratically elected president, and an inclusive constitution. So this roadmap was not developed by the army alone, and they did not remain in political power. Nevertheless...
But they are part of this establishment. The army is part of the government.
Of course. I mean, the Minister of Defense is part of the government like any Minister of Defense anywhere in the world. Now, given the fact that there still is tension in the street, and consequently the army and the police have substantial forces in different parts of Egypt out on the street.
That's right.
Questions come up, are they really handing over power or not? My answer is quite simple. We are going through a transition, a serious transition. I think we've taken the right steps in immediately going back to a civilian president, establishing now what has been called, ironically, the most liberal government in Egyptian history after the revolution, and a day ago establishing the first of two committees that would deal with the constitution. And then within, I expect, another day or so, you will have the beginning of the Reconciliation Commission, which will attempt to bring in members from all walks of life to try to bring Egyptians together.
Including the Ikhwan.
They will be invited. I'm not sure whether they will come or not. And they remain out in demonstrating in different parts of Egypt.
Yeah.
Hopefully, over time, we'll be able to include them and convince them to engage in the political process. There's no moving back. We want to move forward in an inclusive fashion.
Do you mean to say that these protests perhaps could be a tactic to bargain before they come to the talks table?
I'm not a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. It's up for them to determine how they want to do this. It could be an expression of their continued anger, or it could be a bargaining point that they're trying to use, or it could be a tool by which they're attempting to attract foreign attention and therefore increase their leverage. Whatever it is, we will continue to reach out to them. They are Egyptians. We may differ with them politically.
A very vital section of
sure,
Egyptians,
and they are Egyptians, even though I'm not an Islamist politically. I'm a practicing Muslim, but we will continue to reach out to them, and hopefully over time, the mistake that they did, we will not do. The mistake they did last year is try to develop an exclusive society. Egypt is a pluralistic society. We have many, many different faces of Egypt. You cannot govern only in one face. What we intend to do is to try to develop a constitution where all Egyptians find their place, and then develop a constitution, a political process where they can all participate.
All right. You have stressed since you've taken over that a major portion of your responsibility is also in portraying a correct and proper image of Egypt. From what you say, I get the sense that this establishment feels, this government feels that Egypt's future and best interests lie in being a pluralistic democracy as opposed to an Islamist democracy. Is that right?
There's no question that's correct. That's 100% correct. Islamists will be part of the system. They cannot be pushed aside. But others, whether they are secular politicians or believers of different political trends, they have to find their place. We have a pluralistic system. We don't yet have a pluralistic political system. Sorry, we have a pluralistic society.
Yeah.
But we don't have yet a pluralistic political system. When one majority gets into power, they tend to want to have exclusive authority. That will not work.
But isn't that
in
itself?
open
But isn't that itself part of democracy and the democratic process?
Now, there's a difference between wanting to push your political agenda and excluding others. Once you're elected, you are responsible for the minority as well as the majority. You can push your politics, but you cannot exclude any of your nationals.
So, what is this correct and proper image of Egypt, if you could sum it up for us, that you have set forth to portray to the rest of the world?
An inclusive, transparent, accountable Egypt. In other words, inclusive of different walks of life, a transparent system where information is available, where decision making is obvious to the people, an accountable system where the ruler and the ruled understand that the ruler is accountable, and those being the laymen understand they can hold their leaders accountable. I would add also that we cannot live in isolation. We are part of the international community, so we have to be consistent. We have to engage the community, convey our culture, our trends, our concerns to the community to try to ensure that they are part of international norms. But at the same time, we need to rise up and remain consistent with international norms and standards. You cannot live in isolation. So this should be a Egypt. In many ways, I think the challenge really is we're trying to define the political identity of 21st century Egypt.
And immediately, what is it? What form is it taking immediately?
Well, immediately it's still through a transition process. We're still pushing and pulling. But I think one thing that you can take for granted is this will be a young image. We have a wonderful, long, generous history and very deep, rich culture. But 56% of our population is younger than 25 years old. So
and that is a massive advantage.
Definitely, it's a massive advantage, but it also defines the identity as being something looking into the future rather than carrying only the baggage of the past.
Now, Egypt is also placed very fortuitously in a very crucial, very important, strategically important region in the Middle East and Arab world, and it's not just internally that one has to look when you're talking about Egypt in the current situation. It's also externally, which is again your job, your area. The Suez Canal, a very strategic, strategic part of contribution to your economy. Tourism also, depending a lot on internal stability. Two main challenges, the economy and security that Egypt currently faces. How challenging are these for your government and for you particularly to convince the world that it's all right, that people can come, tourists can come?
I think there's no question that putting the security situation in place, stabilizing it, I think basically Egypt is a secure country statistically by any standard internationally, but because of the political tensions, there was this sense of insecurity. That has to be lessened. It has to be lessened politically as well as by the presence of the security forces.
But it is these very perceptions that are keeping tourists away, and that's hurting your
that's
economy.
What I'm saying. So probably the greatest priority is security. We need to ensure security. Once you do that, then you will get more tourists, you will get more businessmen coming in, and that will help, of course, in the economy immediately. So I would place the security issue as the most prominent, and that's why, frankly, that's one of the reasons, not the only reason, why we are really encouraging the Islamists in the opposition to engage politically in a peaceful fashion, expressing their opinion, challenging others. And that's why we're also saying that continuous disruption of security, loss of life, casualties is not acceptable.